Hi there, everybody. The name's Rory, and I'd just like to share with you some sort of ideas of how I sort of approach programs, not rather programs, but projects, when I'm moving them from Sketchup into Unreal Engine. Now, the key behind all of this is that I routinely used to work with SketchUp Cinema 4D and then do the renders of the stills. And sometimes a client would wait for me to send the thing through, and I had to wait for a couple of hours for a photorealistic render of one snap to take place if I wanted a high quality and so forth. And it used to be efficient for me up until the point that I realized that there must be a better solution, because people are trying to develop, real-time rendering engines when you're busy working and you can then render, but most of them fell short. The closest I got was Thea Render, which could work in the actual desktop area of SketchUp and render pictures. But every time you turned into another angle, it had to re-render. But it was brilliant. Thea Render was my number one usage. Now you notice I don't have Thea Render on the menu here at all. It's because I realized that if I have Thea Render, I will keep on wanting to go to it as a fallback. So I've moved my whole process from doing all the renders and textures inside Unreal Engine and just do the modeling in SketchUp. Or if I wanted to do modeling in Cinema 4D, I'd go do it there. But I'm trying to have a simple workflow where I create an object in one space and do all the texturing and rendering in another space. Now, before I sort of carry on with the modeling side and what I am aware of when I'm creating a model to take out into Unreal Engine, I just want to share with you the Unreal Engine. This is it. It is a free to use product. All they say is if you're starting to create, I think every quarter, if you're starting to create over $3,000 in profits, anything over above that, share 5% of your profits with Unreal Engine as a royalty towards them. I think that is extremely, extremely generous in the way they've done it. All they are saying is, if we allow you to make money with, and not just any amount of money, but a reasonable amount of money, then you share a percentage with us. So it is a partnership that I think is great. You'll still have people that are complaining that, they have to share some profits and they wouldn't want to do this. But when you're getting over $1 million development system that's been used for developing all A-grade games and everything, you should appreciate it. But where we benefit as the indie artist or the novice in these situations is the fact that you're benefiting from all of this technology and all of this power, and it's free basically, because I'd never get to the point of putting a product out in the marketplace and making that kind of money on a regular basis. It would be for a particular client. That's in my case specifically. So I particularly won't get to use all the features of the gaming engine. What I'm interested in is the photorealism that gets created with this particular program. And why is it of significance now? I would say that a lot of architectural visualizations are starting to move into this space. A lot of the architectural visualizations from, for example, Revit and those programs are creating, I think it was Lumion and RT, Lumen and all those ones. They're creating real-time editing and walkthroughs and all that, but it's nowhere near that high quality and photorealism. It's trying to do that. What I find with the gaming engine, because it's designed on a total different paradigm, it doesn't render in real time. It basically bakes in all the light maps that are there. So it assumes that if the camera's on this space, this is what the reflectivity, this is what the shadows would look like. It bakes it into the system. So once it's baked in, when you walk through the system, there's no rendering happening. You're just visualizing the things that have already been generated. And because we're doing selective areas, like we are doing a house or a presentation of an area, and we're not developing it for massive games. In my case, all that energy can actually be put into higher quality and higher rendering qualities of the visuals that we're working with, so that our walkthroughs are close to, if not equal to, photorealism in it. So that's what I'm excited about. And more architectural visualization guys are moving into this space. So I just wanted to give you some insight into the Unreal Engine. It's extremely powerful. You can create mountain ranges and all scenery around here, and it works seamlessly. But I'm not going to get into that. What I'm going to do is just tell you how I developed the actual model in SketchUp, and what things I look out for when I'm putting a model together. And sometimes you can bring a model from SketchUp, from the 3D warehouse, and import it, but you're not sure how the person designed it and whether they've created the proper groupings and everything. And when you take it into Unreal, the model can fall apart as far as textures go and all that. So I think to a great extent, I rather prefer creating my own models, or bringing in a model and then just checking out the qualities of each of those components to ensure that I don't have a model that breaks when I move into Unreal. Now, there's two approaches here. The one is you could texture the model here. That means you can put in materials. And then I've got the SketchUp UV, and there's some other programs that deal with UV maps and that, and you can put it in and correct the UV maps. There's a program also called, I think it's Play Up, something like that. I'm not too sure. But that also, where you have a model, put textures on and anything, and then that generates a sort of a model that you can export out and take it into Unreal Engine, and all the textures will be right. But Unreal Engine works on a 2 UV system. Usually you have a UV map, and then it uses a second UV channel to do its modifications and alterations. I tend to keep it quite simple. I do the modeling in SketchUp, and I'll show you how I take it into Unreal Engine. And in Unreal Engine, I use the materials and the lights and everything and the rendering in Unreal Engine, because I feel if I use the built-in material editor to generate the materials inside Unreal, it's Unreal's own materials, and the render engine will understand that better, and there's so much more control there that works on a node system, which I'll cover a bit later. So keys when you're creating in SketchUp is everything that you work with that you're going to add a texture to, a similar texture. So if I'm going to add the floor texture to this, I must make this into a group. I can't take another section, put it up here, and I'm going to add a different material to it. So I can't, for example, do a square, and if I pull that up, I can't, for example, go and do something like this, and this part is the same as this. It's all together. As if I do this and I take this unit in like this, and it's not in a group, Unreal Engine will treat this entire thing as one unit. So if I put a material on this one section, it will flow onto the entire thing. If I wanted to add 2 different types of materials, pardon me, I would have had to grab that one, create it as a group, and then grab the other one and create it as a group. Unreal treats each group or each component as a separate entity. And when you import it into Unreal Engine, it will take each group as an individual entity. It will place the model all together, but it keeps each of those units separate. And that's crucial. That's the one part about it. The second part is if you've got a surface, a single surface like this that's got no height on it, it's just got the length and width, one side will always be what they call reversed, and the other side will be the right way up. Like the lighter side is on the right way up, and that is reversed. I can press a quick key here, and it will flip it. This will be the right side up, the lighter side. You look at the bottom, it goes dark. Press it again. So it flips in between. Now, you cannot take a surface, a single surface like this into Unreal Engine, because whenever there's a reverse surface and you're looking at that surface in Unreal Engine, it will appear transparent. You'll see nothing there. It would look like it doesn't exist. So you always must make sure that the surfaces are all the right way up. So in principle, if you're creating a window somewhere, and this is the square you're creating that you're going to flip up, you have to create some sort of depth to it, even if it's a small depth. Now this is snapping at the moment, so that's why I'm not getting an exact, even if I want to do it thinner. But basically that would be your window. It would have both sides, which in reality does have both sides. There's a inside and outside to window. There's always a thickness to substances. So that is crucial when you're going and you're creating a structure and putting a window in. You must make sure that you don't just create a single line. The reason I mention that is because sometimes what happens is, I'll show you now, if we take this object, I'm going to just extrude this here. What some people do is they say, okay, this is the object, I've grouped it here now. Then they go inside and they draw a single line. Let me just go up here. Okay, across. So they got that and they go, okay, there I've got a single, that is my window. But if you notice, the one side is flipped and the other side is lighter color, darker color. Now you take it into Unreal Engine and you group the single layer as one group. But when you take it into Unreal Engine, when you're inside the place, say this was the inside of the property, the room you're making, you'll be able to see solid here. When you go on the outside, you'll see there's nothing in this place here because the one surface is flipped. So always if you're making, I'm going to just explode this, or it is. If you're making a window, rather go in and just a quick tip, if you want to pull this out to a certain measurement, you can zoom in, take the pencil tool, and maybe just make a line there with the axis, and you can get the push-pull tool and pull that out and it snaps to that line. So you don't have to pull and hope that it snaps to something. But basically the inside and outside now will be the correct side showing out, and in that way both surfaces will be solid surface when you take into Unreal. Okay, so hope those little tips help there. I'm going to delete that. Let's just press delete. Okay, I'm going to create a simple room. So this here is a surface, got a thickness, and now I'm going to just go and create another surface here and push pull tool, and I'm going to say make that 2 meters up. Whoops. And we're going to we're going to make that a thickness there. Let's say that's the thickness. I select all of that, make that into a group, and I'll just duplicate that. Let's move that out to the side. Okay, so, and then I'm going to create a duplicate of that wall. Okay, flip it there 180, and take that surface, bring it in here. The other thing is also you want to try and prevent walls cutting through other walls, so you're going to try and have them edge to edge. That's the better solution. If you have them cutting through there, they can create some artifacts along the way, which is just good design principles. Now, I'm going to create a duplicate and just drag it along there, and it snaps there. So I've got a room here, and I think I'll take the floor and just duplicate that. Let's see if we go from there to there. Okay, so I have now surfaces that are all touching and close together, and possibly let me see if I'm going to create a opening here. I'm going to just triple click here so I can create a window there. Select that. Okay, so I've got a window there. I'm going to take this box and imagine this is a room. I'm going to take it into Unreal. Now, as I said, we've got each unit being an independent group. Okay, so that is key. Number one is every of your components that you're going to be wanting to keep as a separate thing, you've got to create a group with them when you move them out. Then when you export your 3D model into FBX format. Now, if you don't have SketchUp Pro and you have a free version, or I don't know what other versions exist anymore, but if you don't have the Pro version, you can export it as a DAE file, the Collada extension, and then get a program called, that's a free program from Autodesk, FBX Converter. You pull in the DAR file, and then you export it as a FBX. But FBX is the file that Unreal Engine works with. And try not to, on a forum, request that they import SketchUp files and all of those. Stick to the pure thing that FBX carries not only model information, it carries animation information, lots of other things. So it's a good format to work with, and we'll just stick with that. Rather do your conversions in all other programs and bring it in. Now, the one thing is when you bring it across, I'm not taking textures across because, like I explained, textures get broken sometimes when they come across. So you want to keep the textures out of the equation. The second thing is the Unreal Engine requests that smoothing takes place when you export. Now, SketchUp doesn't do that, and I haven't found it totally essential. Maybe someone will develop a extension for SketchUp that's going to do the kind of smoothing that Unreal expects. I'm not talking about general smoothing, which is tools that we have already. So I'm going to call this, I have one, it's a room already. Maybe I'll just call it room again. Under options, all I do is leave the swap coordinates. Unreal works in centimeters, so you keep the dimension thing going straight. And I don't export any texture maps. That's just my preference. Nothing else on there. So I'm going to export that. And yes. Okay, so it's saying there's 54 faces. One material, because that's a default material. There's 6 groups. So there'll be 6 parts that will be pulled into the program. Okay. Then I have a routine thing here. When I open up, I create folders. And usually it's 3 folders. If I go here and I'll say, okay, give me a new folder. The one I'll call a model. Then I'll create another folder called, oops, let me just click on that, material. Now material is the materials I'm going to make. I'm not importing materials. The materials I'll make inside Unreal Engine. And then the third one I usually create is called textures. Now, texture is a picture of something like a picture of a brick wall that you can use inside the texture to create photorealism. You can bring it in and use that image as the actual image. And you've got to add certain features to it to make it realistic. So if it's a brick wall, you're trying to create a bit of depth with it. So you might use, a bit of normal maps and sort of distortions or other sort of features to make it look realistic. But in most cases, you could use just a normal picture, and you don't have to have all the other fancy stuff unless you're going into excessive detail. Now, when you open the general program and just say you want to open up a normal, if I go back here, we won't see that window now, but if I say I want a normal scene here, I can actually choose, or maybe I should just show you what it looks like. Hopefully I get to that window. Yep, something like this. So I could say I want it to be like a first-person shooter kind of environment. Then it will bring in sample objects, or what they call assets, into the scene with a gun thing that you can walk through as a first person. If you want to remove the gun, you've got to do a couple of bit of edits. If you're doing a flying game. So these are kind of presets of components in things that you need, so you don't have to, start off from scratch working. So it's like a basic startup template. The one that I chose just comes in as a blank one with a surface like this, and it's got these specific things in the hierarchy over here, which it brings in some atmospheric fog, the floor, a light source, which is the actual sun over here. This is the light source that's over in the scene. And then the player, this is when we start walking through the scene. This will be the player, and this little box around it is called I think it's called the collider box, whatever. So if you create a wall and you say that this thing, when it tries to walk through it, must collide with that wall. So this will be the surface, which will be the kind of colliding surface. You can make it bigger or smaller. And a sky sphere is there too. If I switch it off, you'll see it removes the actual background, the clouds that we're seeing in the background. It takes all that away. If I switch the light off, you can see its effect. But these are default things that are there. Two little things that I change routinely when I start off, and you could set it up as a preset, but I'll go into the editor and I go change how my mouse works in the viewport. I flip how my mouse is, the y-axis and the middle mouse pan button, because that gives me the ability to work similar to how I'm used to in program like Cinema 4D, where you keep the Alt button down and you navigate in a certain way, and the middle mouse button down. I'm familiar working with that for many years, so I try and stick to the mouse interactions, and you can set it up, customize it for yourself. The second thing is the project settings. When you get into a room that you add lighting, if you're in a dark room, the program itself will do what cameras would do if you have it on auto. It would do an auto exposure. It changes the lighting in the room to make it visible for you. So it's not the real lighting happening. It's actually an auto exposure. It's compensating for darkness or light. And I don't like that. I want to know if it's dark, it's dark. If I put a light in, I want to have that light creating the necessary light that I want. So I come down in project settings down to rendering, and then there's a setting further down. If I scroll down, it says default settings. There it says auto exposure is on. I want that to be off. And you'd see in the window on the side here, when I put it on, it adjusts itself. If I switch it off, that's actually how the light is at the moment. So technically, if that auto exposure, if I left it on and I made this light very bright, if I did the sun source and I push the light up, it will dim itself because it doesn't want to overexpose. So having that auto switched off actually makes the things work a bit more in real sort of terms. Okay, so if I go to the model now and I open the model folder and then I click import, I am going to go and import that room FBX. Now when I import here, because I haven't chosen any materials, there won't be anything coming in with it, but I just also routinely would go here where it says import materials. I said no, and import textures, I say no. So I bring it in without that. The other thing is this auto-generate collisions. If you're creating complicated scenes, you can create the walls to be a space that if you walk through it in a real virtual environment, that you'll collide with it. You won't be able to walk through the wall. You can create the collisions yourself, but I just put on auto collision because then it does it for me. I can always disable it on the different surfaces. So I say import, and you'll notice that it will import, and this is the message I said it will bring up. Please make sure that you enable export smoothing groups. Now it comes up and it gives you that bit of error, but it functions well still. So here's my surface, and the model that I've just imported is down here at the bottom. Okay, like I said, I've got no materials, nothing, just the actual model. So I'm going to select there, press shift, select all of them, and I'm going to drag them. Now you can drag each individual one on. But the benefit of pulling the whole model in at the same time is that they're all orientated to the proper axes, and they'll come in as a unit itself. So I'm going to just position it over this player icon here, because then we'll place that player inside the actual room that we've created. Then I can let go. What happens is on this right hand side, you'll see all the meshes are all highlighted by default when you drop it in. And then there's a little icon on top here to create a folder. Now, while they're all selected, if I click that, I'll create a hierarchy folder, which I can call, say, room. And all those meshes will be in that hierarchy room. I could do that on its own also by, selecting it normally and going to click on the thing there. But once I drop it in routinely, I go create a folder and just keep all those models in there. Because if I click the eye here, I can make it switch off and on. Okay, so we are now going to go inside this room, and it should be pretty dark because this is sun on the outside. And okay, I'm seeing the sun here, and it's showing through here. Maybe I can make the sun shine through this opening that we have here. And when I move the sun like this, it's not going to change its rays at all, because this is a an infinite light. It comes from a space above. It's not like we are moving it from east to west. You've got to do that adjustment another way. So if I rotate the angle, it's most likely going to be hitting inside through the room into this particular space. So I'm going to position myself inside this room and just see what's happening here. Okay, there I can see a bit of light coming through from there, and then I am just going to try and move back a bit. Then I'm going to click this build button, which is going to render this area so we can see the light that effectively works in here. Now here again, like I mentioned before, this software works very different in that it bakes in the light effects, the shadows, everything. Once it's there, you can walk through it and navigate through it. All the qualities will stay baked onto those images. That's why that whole UV setup is so important, because it uses the UV coordinates pinned at the correct spaces to actually place the images, the materials and the textures onto them correctly. But currently now I've got a model in here that's got no textures, no materials, anything. So even though it's saying building the texture streaming, it's building the visual elements of the lights in here. Okay, it says one map needs lighting rebuild, and there was one error. Let's see there. Okay, so basically we're still seeing that light in there, and it's still showing us that this material here is preview, because it hasn't built all the light. There it's just finished now, and now we can see the dark room. That's what it looks like. Okay, so that's the light coming in. If I go, I'm navigating inside and just seeing that's where the light is. Okay, now I'm going to do something and go to the lighting setup. This is why I like this program. When you put in a light in the space, it starts to work effectively and you can see what you're doing. So I'm going to drag a light in here and let go, and maybe choose, here use W, E and R keys to use the different setups. So I've put a light in here now, and it immediately tells me that the lighting needs to be rebuilt now, because there's a new light in it, needs to generate new maps onto it. But before I generate new maps, I'm going to add some materials to this. So I'm going to go outside of the content here and go to the materials folder, and just to organize it properly. I mean, you can call the materials folder anything you want to. But I'm going to right click here and say material, and let's call this floor. Okay, so I'm going to use that on the floor. Now the exciting part comes when you double click on the material. It opens up a material editor, and I worked with Cinema 4D, I worked with Sketchup. I saw some of the render engines used all these node systems, and I think Blender uses nodes and all that, and I wasn't too familiar with it, so I felt a bit intimidated. But it takes a few little setups to make materials work relatively effective. You can spend time getting into the high details with materials, but I'll be able to give you maybe 4 attachment nodes to this that you basically need to do with most of your materials, and you'll sort of be okay. To create a material, you can either drag in a texture, so a picture here, or you can create it from scratch without any textures put to it. There's a whole list and a host of selections you can have here, but you just need to start off with this, where you press the button 3, hold it down and click your left mouse button. It will put in a setting here, which is a constant, what they call a constant 3 vector node, but it's basically got 3 things in which we're going to allocate that to different colors. So I'm going to take from here, you hold left mouse button down and just drag it to base color. Okay, that's one setting. The next one is keep the 1 button down, click the left mouse button, and you create basically a 1 constant, which is going to be used to actually just put a value from 0 to 1 in there, and that you put in roughness. The reason for roughness is here you're choosing what color is going to be. Roughness is choosing how rough it's going to be or how smooth it's going to be. If it's got 0 roughness, then it's going to be almost like glass, or like a mirror, it shines. If it's got 100% roughness, then it's going to be like chalk, because it doesn't reflect anything. And there you can kind of see the preview. It's black with here, if I click on here, you can see there's 0 value here. If I change this, and it works from 0, 1 to 0. 1 is 100%, 0 is 0. So if I got 0.1, it's basically like 10%. So if I go 0.3, you'll see this picture will refresh and it will show you now a less shiny image. But besides doing that, there's another thing which we could teach you later, but I prefer mentioning it now. It's the only one that you're going to have to kind of remember, but it's got to do with the coordinates of a texture. So you're going to bring a texture in and then place it at a think of it in this way. You're bringing in a texture and it's going to be positioned at certain coordinates in the material that you are using. Okay, just here, can you see again? This is still the dark color, but now it's not that shiny. It's got a specular spot there, but it's not like mirror kind of thing. And that's all because you added a bit of roughness. If this was a metal, you just also keep one down, click there and put in metallic and choose the amount of metal. Okay, but before we get to that, now I'm going to say what you can do is right click, and in here you type texture coordinates. Before you need to finish type it, the word comes up. And that's the only other one that you technically need to remember for now. So when you say texture coordinate and click it, all it's doing is saying that if you put in a picture into this, then you can tell using this, you can plug it in to the picture. Now this is just a color, so there's nothing on the left to plug it in. But if you have to drag a texture here, you get which I'll show you just now, you get a seamless texture, or you can get it from the internet or from anywhere where you have your images, a nice square one. You pull it in, and once you pull it in here, it will have outputs here like RGB and an alpha, and on the left hand side it would also have a UV input, and you'll connect this to that UV input, and what it will do is in here you'll be able to give the coordinates of that texture, because sometimes the texture might be too big or too small, and this is how you would control it. But for now we'll just leave that, it's not connected. I'm going to double click on this to change the color, and then we can drag the color to be maybe whatever. This color here at the bottom is what it's been changed to, so we're going to go for, say, that pinkish color. So this will change to a pink color, which is this color here. Then I'm going to say apply. And I usually just say save. Can you see that sort of almost skin color over there? And then you can close this dialog box, and you can see there it says floor, and there's the pinkish color. Now I'm going to drag it on here and let go. Now you're noticing that nothing's happening because we've got to start rebuilding. In most cases it drops immediately and it will make the immediate change. At the moment this is all still busy updating itself. We'll just be slightly patient. It usually happens much faster than this. But here you can see automatically I've not clicked anything and it's saying shader compiling. Okay, there we go. So it's placed that pink in, but can you see that texture that we've had in there? Not the texture, but the material property. If we have to go back in here now, and I have to go and click this and set it to 0.1. Now I'm getting it as 10% roughness, so it's going to be quite shiny now. So I've altered that. I've got to apply the change, and I just usually do the save. Can you see it's much more shiny now? But when we're done with that and it's updated, we'll look at the actual model, and can you see all of a sudden that is now starting to shine much better, and it will get better quality once we actually do a little bit of render on the, with the properties of the lighting and that sort of thing. At the moment it still needs to rebuild the lighting, but I won't rebuild it now. What I'm going to do is just do a texture on the wall, one of these walls, but I will take this actual material and duplicate it. Now, to duplicate an object here, if you have an object, when you select it, you get the handles. Maybe I should just move out. These handles that you move, if you press Alt on the keyboard and you drag out, you'll be able to create a copy. So that's how you, that's how you create copies. But when you're duplicating a material, you actually have to press And I've just got to make sure that it's either Control W or Shift W. I'll check now. But you choose the material. I'm going to go Shift W. Nope. Control W. There we go. So it's duplicating that material, and I'm going to just call that wall. And the reason I do that is because then we're now duplicating that, and I can just edit this one and do the changes that I need. I don't have to restart again. So as you see, I've got all those same settings here. But in this case now I want to get a seamless texture that I want to use in the spot, because I want to use the coordinates to actually make sure that sometimes you bring in the texture and it's the right size and you don't have to add the coordinate thing to it. But I think what we're going to do is I am going to shift this out of the way. The other thing that you're going to get used to is we're so used to working in one dialogue and closing it totally, but yeah, these dialogues are big and in your face, but you can move them to the side and then just go to the others. So I'm going to go to material, let's see, textures, and I'm going to say import a texture. Now I'm going to look at, I think I have some textures here, and there's a nice brick wall. That's about going to explain how these things work. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling in a texture here, which is a seamless texture that I got off the internet. So it's a square thing, and if you put lots of them, tile them together, pretty much go seamless next to each other. Then all you do with the material thing here now, I'm going to remove the link over here. I'm going to press the Alt key and just click on one of these nodes, and it disappears. And then this I can select and say delete. Now I'm going to take this image and drag it here, and when I drag a texture in there, see what happens. It creates a texture sample, and it's got a whole lot of settings here. With the texture, which is a picture, it comes in as a color picture. It's got red, green, blue. It's got an alpha channel at the bottom. So if I wanted to take the red color of this in there, I could do it the green or the blue. Or if I take the top one, it takes the entire mixture of colors through. The bottom one is the alpha channel, and that applies to certain things. So if I take this through here now, as you look at this image, it looks black because there's nothing plugged into the base. But if I take it there now and I let go, you're going to see this particular brick texture is going to now be our source. Now, yeah, this is quite shiny, and I don't think the brick wall needs to be that shiny. So when I click here, I can go, and everything in nature has a bit of shine, but a brick wall should maybe have 0.85. So that is kind of rough. It won't shine that much. It will be kind of glossy, little bit of shine on it, but it's mostly rough. Now, here I'm going to just take this coordinate and put it into UV. Okay. Now remember earlier I said that these three things are basically what you can use for most of your textures. Now, if you're going to create a bit of a normal map or other kind of properties, like if I wanted to create this more as a glass or transparent, I click off everything, and here on the side here, where is it here by physical? No. Am I going to expose myself now? Oh, here we go. Blend mode. You'll see there's opaque, masked, translucent, additive. So if it was translucent, you'll go over to translucent over there. That's if you're making things like glass and so forth. You just click off everything, and then you can go and set that. But here you can see now this brick textures in here, and just the natural thing, and that's why I love doing the textures inside Unreal. It detects that needs to be a kind of, a sort of a normal map kind of feature. It's I just can't get to this very simple word that I need to use, and we use it in 3D all the time, but I'm not going to even try and think about it. But it's not the real thing, because if you look at the edge here, it's still round and smooth. If you put in a normal map, which is taking this picture and generating what they call a normal map, you'll see these edges will actually deflect, it will curve inside as realistic sort of bumps in there. Oh, the word I was looking for is a bump map. Oh, how crazy can it be for me to forget? But if you take an image, this particular image, and for example in Photoshop, and convert it to grayscale, that it's just grades of darker gray and so forth, and put it in as a bump map, it will also create that impression of indentations and so forth. Okay, the art of working with materials are at another level, and I don't intend, getting you to become a specialist. All I'm showing you is that now we've added this, but now when we add it to the wall, we might find that the bricks are too big or too small, and that's when the texture coordinate will come in. So I'm going to apply that. And remember, we're applying it to that second material. And then I can say save. Did I say save? Yes, it's saving. And then I'll just close this dialog. You can click close there, or you could just click over here and it will close. Then I'm going to go back to the material window, and you'll see this wall one now has changed with that texture. Now I'm going to take that and place it on the wall. And let's see what happens. Can you see that it is microscopically small? No, not microscopic, but it's so tiny, so the actual size is way out. So I've got to do something like either increase the size or decrease it. That's where the power of the texture coordinates coming. So I'm going to go in there, and it gives me the U tiling and the V tiling, which is the vertical and the sort of horizontal tiling. So I'm going to go and take it in one direction, say make it 0.1 by 0.1. And then we're going to apply it and see what happens to the wall. If the bricks start to get a bit bigger, we know we're moving in the right direction. Now it's recompiling that. Okay, we'll just wait for that to take shape. Okay, I think I'm going to just put it on pause, and when it's done doing that, which might happen very quickly or might take a little bit longer. So let me just put this on pause for a second. Okay, I think, let me see, have I unpaused? Yeah, I've unpaused it. And there we see the bricks are now much bigger than what they were before, but they're not big enough. So I think we could maybe go to, yeah, and here's a strange thing, the sizing you put in here, it looks like I'm going smaller from 1 to 0, 1. But it's got to do with how the map tiling works, and you'll get to understand it once you sort of fiddle with it a bit. So I'm going to go 0.01, 0.01, and apply that, and let's see. We should see this actual thing. It's recompiling now. It should actually get to be a bit bigger. And there again, we're doing the shade compiling of 28. And just hopefully that comes through quickly. But basically, this is what the materials are all about. If you learn to know these sort of 3 components here, you can basically get away with most things. Put in a wood texture, the normal maps and all that. I think you need to spend a bit of time to get really good materials and textures and all that. And there are ones for free that you can download, things that guys have spent time on already, and build up your texture library. But I do believe that it's best to create your materials inside Unreal Engine so that you can have your realism actually be much closer to what you want to. I haven't said apply, have I? My goodness, hopefully I haven't wasted your time there. And let's just see there. I'm going to save there and take faith that it's going to be corrected. Okay, pretty much the shaders are still there. It should correct. Whoops, I think that's a bit too big. So I think we're going to go, and here's my maths now. It's going to be 0.5, 0.5. Is it that or 0.5? Okay, let's apply that. Okay, so it's recompiling that now. But interesting that you note, yeah, that's about sort of where we're going to. So I'm not going to spend much more time, but you realize that if it's very tiny, you basically drop the numbers smaller. It will increase in size. if it was massive, say this was on 1 and this thing was very massive, you'll go down to, you'll start typing in 2, 3 and so forth, and then the size will decrease. So you've just got to understand how these work, and I'm not into explaining, which way it's going. It is initially confusing, but once you get the hang of it, you'll know which way to go, or just fiddle with it. So we have those bricks there now, and all I can do is take this material and apply it there, and it's going to pretty much do that for us. Okay, and yeah, so we've got a brick wall there now. The roof, I am going to take this and say Control W and make this just the roof. And if you spend lots more time with these things, you really can get much better results. Okay, I'm going to apply that. What I've done is just changed the roof of the same material as this peachy color. Just change it to white. So we'll have a sort of a blue-gray roof, which I think is. Maybe we'll pop one of those onto one of the walls also. Let's see, maybe. Yeah, let's maybe put more walls and leave one of the walls with. Just leave one wall with brick on it so we can see. Okay, so that's our room, and I mean we've got one light inside here, and give and take all the other things about creating, the walkthrough. I'll just press the play game here, and this is actually your virtual walkthrough technically that we can have. Now, I mean, I haven't finished. It still needs to be rendered, certain objects, but I think if you look at this now, the reflectivity, the lighting, the real-time textures that we're having, and I'm walking real-time in it now, to get this kind of level of quality and rendering with a normal render engine it's something I've not been able to do effectively. You'd kind of stand in one spot. For example, you'll be here, and then you press render and get this visual, and then as soon as you turn it, then it has to start re-rendering. And just to give you a little bit of impression is we've built this. We haven't finished building the lighting for this scene, but if you look at the build is on preview. This isn't even at the production level quality, so there's so much level of quality that we can still bring in. But as you notice, the light here is from that window outside, and that is baked over here, so whether we walk close to it or around here, that light kind of stays there, which in reality, often even when you work from a little angle, that light might change based on where camera settings and everything are. But when you are in an environment like this, your brain is telling you enough that is realistic. The light is coming from outside, and unless the sun starts to move outside, will this light move here? And maybe I should just show you that if we do that, I'm going to just rotate this light a little bit. Okay, and then we can move right back in here. And you notice now that light that's supposed to be in here is gone, but it actually says preview here. That means that area of the light now, unless I'm just checking here, let me just see. Yeah, it means that area of the light that was shining in here is no longer shining in here because we've moved the sun, so we have to re-render it. So if I press build again, it's going to regenerate where the light should be from. So in this particular render engine or this gaming engine, it assumes that certain objects are going to be stationary and they're not going to be moving. So if you have a character that's walking through and you want to see the character and the light on the character and all that, the system will use a different render system to ensure that the shadows follow the object as you're moving. But in most cases of what I use, the objects stand perfectly still. They don't move around. Okay, so here now I've generated the light and it's actually quite bright. Now I can set the camera here, that the camera shutter speeds and all that can be altered. There's such a lot of stuff I can alter. I'm just doing the extreme basic. So if I have a walkthrough in this environment, this is what I'll have. I mean, there you're looking at the bricks there now, and those bricks are not really at the highest resolution that I could have used as textures, but they look pretty good at where they are there already, and quite realistic. When I render it at this highest resolution, they will look phenomenal. And also if I had to use a higher texture brick, there's so many things that you still can do to improve it all. And all I'm doing is now moving around with my mouse, and you can see the reflections and everything are there. If I'm standing here, that's what has been rendered. If I turn there, that's what we're seeing in the render. If I move in the scene and turn around with the bricks and move back, so it's like a render, but you are in real time looking and moving around. Now this doesn't even have proper shadowing, proper light cast. There's still things like if you go in with visual effects, you've got to drop in what we call a light sphere. Am I calling it the right name? A sphere reflection. And what this does is it actually creates a sphere where the walls and everything reflect on it, and they create the proper reflection around. There's quite a few things that still have to be done, but in general, I'm just showing you the power of what we have here, the ability to have a virtual environment that we can walk through and see reflectivity, see shadows and everything cast. Now I'm going to just go and see if I switch off the outside light. The point light, I am going to drop down the power a bit. I think 1500. And just see if I rebuild that light. And then we'll round off with this. Just hopefully it gives you an idea that you can create your model in SketchUp, bring it into Unreal Engine, add some textures, and start working and create some relatively impressive visuals. I mean, this is like real basic, the core of nowhere near its actual ability. I'm like just throwing in textures and doing stuff here just to get some model going. But there now I've dropped the light down to about 1,500, and they say about 1,700 is equal to a 100-watt bulb. So we're in the room now. Can you see I've altered the light power, and there we have more realistic kind of if it's in a darker room. So you can imagine if we've got light fixtures here with, let me just do this and show you that if I took a light and I took a spotlight and I put it in the if we are moving that spot, let's choose the spotlight. What is happening here? Have I made the proper selection? There we are. Okay. So if I've chosen a spotlight there, and there's all the settings as far as the outer cone goes and so forth. And that's pretty much, I've now just dropped in a spotlight into that area. If I do a bit of a render, you could put in light units and create IES lights, fall down lights and all that. And it's quite brilliant. I'm extremely impressed with how this works. And then let's put it into the view mode. There we have the drop down light that we spoke about. And I usually like going here. My last thing to show you is I put it in a viewport. I go to viewport 2, which places me outside this here. I'll have to reposition it, but for now, let me just see if I can get into this building. Okay, so viewport 2 gives me walk around abilities over here. And if I want to render this, I press Alt P, and it will get me into the gaming mode. So that's the quality that we're getting. I mean, you're in a room with a wall that's got a reflectivity, a roof that's got a reflectivity, a brick wall that's made out of textures. You've got a general omni light, and then you've got a drop down light over there. I am extremely impressed with the ability and the realism that we can get. And now pretty much you can have somebody having a walkthrough in this environment. I mean, they can walk through and see what's going on what. Now I've generated this walkthrough here as just as a sample walkthrough. If you look at the wall there, the quality, if I press Alt P, we switch back into this 3D walkthrough mode. And this is all preview mode. So those bricks, if they're better resolution, as I said, if we set it up into production value, you're going to come up with a brilliant quality. And once you're done here, you can render it as a executable file. You can put it into video and everything. If it's an executable file, you can send it to a client and they can actually navigate like a game. They can walk through the place. So if you have a building or an environment, you can give them experience of walking around and seeing everything. They can come to the corner there and see there's a little light coming through or whatever. So yeah, I hope this has inspired you to get SketchUp going nice and strong and install Unreal Engine. It's totally free. Download it and start to get a feel for Unreal Engine. You won't be sorry. So Unreal Engine is your texturing and rendering suite that you can use, and the support out there is massive, and it will keep growing with qualities that will just improve your workflow. And SketchUp has been around for years, and it doesn't get more complicated. And if you're doing architectural stuff or concept work, this is going to be a brilliant combination for you. So hopefully that's been of value to you, and I'd like to see more people getting inspired into using the SketchUp and Unreal combination. So thanks very much for listening, and we're just short of an hour. I am just going to pause the video and then just open up a YouTube clip where there's Unreal Engine showing some architectural visualization, real-time visualization, and you can see the ultimate potential. And I hope that inspires you. I'll just let it run for maybe a minute or so. Okay, I haven't put this on the highest resolution, but just to show you that this is where we could be going to. So, this is a real-time walkthrough, so the person's navigating through it and looking through it, seeing the different objects. And this is what the client would see. You'd give them a walkthrough, and this is Unreal Engine doing your rendering of your actual model that you brought in and the texturing. So if you've got good models, they'll be very realistic visuals.